صدق الله العلي العظيم. Am I starting the poetry? Okay. I also had a poem for Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أهلا بشهر رسول الله شعبان، بك الكمال تغنى والهدى ازدانا، يا مجمع القدس والأنوار طبت لقا، أطفى الرحيم بأيامك نيرانا. ذكر الحسين أتانا طاب مولده، يا مرحبا بعظيم ساد دنيانا. هو الوحيد الذي في عيد مولده تشدو التغاريد والألحان أشجانا. يا ابن البتول يا ابن البتول أحاسيس أسطرها، ما شأن شعر يحاكي الشمس تبيانا. يا سبط طه رسول الله معذرة، يا سبط طه رسول الله معذرة، إذا أتاك مديح الود أحزانا. فحالنا من لظى الأعداء مضطرب، والظلم يعصرنا والبأس أضنانا. ما للخطوب تجينا لا تبارحنا، كأنما صار دين البعض شيطانا. الدين بحر عباب فاز قائده، ما كل من خاض نهرا عد ربانا. أبناء أمتنا شدوا عزائمكم، فالشر يرصدنا والوهن أردانا. انهض حسينا وشق الرمس امض بنا، وناول الراية العباس إيذانا. وأمر حشودا تخوض الموت زاحفة، لكي يذيقوا عدو الحق نيرانا. فقد أكلنا من الإذلال معتلفا، ما إن أكلنا مزيدا صار خسرانا. وأنت يا غيرة الأحرار فانتفضي، ودافعي عن حمى الإسلام إيمانا. فهذه الأرض باتت تصطلي غضبا، لتلبس الخشف قارونا وهامانا. السامريون راحوا في حظائرهم، يستنسخون قطيع العجل إنسانا. يبرمجون له الآيات يحفظها، لكنما عقله ينبيك شيطانا. يعيث في الأرض تقتيلا ومفسدة، ولا يخال الذي يجنيه بهتانا. أفكاره بغضة، أخلاقه بقر، أهدافه غزوة والدين هاجانا. إخواننا في الثغور استبسلوا همما، وهم يصولون أشياخا وشبانا. يستذكرون طفوفا أينعت مثلا في التضحيات، ولا يرضون خذلانا. ويهتفون لقد صرنا إلى ظفر، وكيف لا والحسين السبط مولانا. فنحن مثل الحسين الطهر مطلبنا، نبع الشهادة يروي النصر ريانا. صلوات اللهم صل على
Jazakallah khair, Brother Ali, and as always, we're bringing cultures and traditions and color to our commemoration and our celebration of our Imam. So thank you for both the Quran recitation and the poetry. Next up for Urdu, we have Brother Abbas Zaidi, inshallah, followed by Brother Sayyid Hassan Akhtar and Brother Muhammad Shahad and Imam Sajjad. Loud salawat.
बोल मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलावत। वफा जिसका पढ़े कलमा, उसे अब्बास कहते हैं। वफा जिसका पढ़े कलमा, उसे अब्बास कहते हैं। जिसे सजदा करे सजदा, उसे अब्बास کہتے ہیں جو ہے شبیر کی قوت علی کو ناز ہے جس پر جو ہے شبیر کی قوت علی کو ناز ہے جس پر جسے زہرا کہے بیٹا اسے عباس کہتے ہیں وفا جس کا پڑھے کلمہ اسے عباس کہتے ہیں جو تھا شبیر کا خادم اسے صاحبان دل جو تھا شبیر کا خادم اسے صاحبان دل اسے آقا اسے مولا اسے عباس کہتے ہیں وفا جس کا پڑھے کلمہ اسے عباس کہتے ہیں اٹھے طوفان چلے آندھی زمین گردش کرے پھر بھی اٹھے طوفان چلے آندھی زمین گردش کرے پھر بھی رہے اونچا لو جس کا اسے عباس کہتے ہیں وفا جس کا پڑھے کلمہ اسے عباس کہتے ہیں جسے سجدے کرے سجدہ اسے عباس کہتے ہیں بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات
Apologies, there was an attempt to find the slides. As Brother Hussain always prepares and has translations ready for us, but unfortunately this time I couldn't find the file. So he's going to be doing the Urdu poetry for Imam Hussein's Sajda Hussaini. Loud salawat.
Yeah, apologize for that. It's about the sajda of Imam Hussain. نقش یزیدیت کو جو خاک میں ملایا، انسان ماں کے شر سے جو دین کو بچایا، ششماہ کے لہو سے جو قوم کو جگایا، اسلام کا سفینہ ساحل سے جو لگایا، وہ ہے حسینی سجدہ، کیسا عظیم سجدہ.
So there is the sajda Imam Hussain, how exalted is that sajda. आदाब ज़िंदगी जो इंसान को सिखाया, ताहश मुनाफिक का फितना जो दबाया, जिसने यजीदियत से इस्लाम को बचाया, भटकी रूह को जिसने पैगाम हक़ सुनाया, वो है हुसैनी सजदा, कैसा अजीम सजदा. So he guided people towards the हक़. उम्मत की शफाअत का जिसको सबब बनाया, अज़मत की बयां जिसकी कुरान में है आया, जिसके सबब खुदा ने इस्लाम को बचाया और खाके करबला को जिसने शिफा बनाया, वो है हुसैनी सजदा, कैसा अजीम सजदा. So he made the dust of Karbala give shifa, and he saved Islam, and he provides shafaat to the qawm. यूं तो बहुत ही सजदे ऐसा ना कोई पाया था, बार इमामत का किस शौक़ से उठाया, अल्लाह की रज़ा में सर अपना यूं झुकाया और उसकी मोहब्बत में किरदार भी बताया. I will try to translate. There are many sajdas, but no sajda like Imam Hussain sajda. And he bore the weight of the imamat and the mandate with great enthusiasm, and he put his head down, and he was fully submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, whatever he wanted from him. And it was the love of Allah that he sacrificed everything. वो है हुसैनी सजदा, कैसा अजीम सजदा. इस्लाम के लिए जो खूने जिगर बहाया, तेगों तले वो सजदा अल्लाह को पसंद आया. ए नफ्स मुतमइन्ना पैगाम हक़ आया, राज़ी हूँ कह के अपनी फिरदौस में बुलाया. वो है हुसैनी सजदा, कैसा अजीम सजदा. So for the sake of Islam, he shed his own blood and the blood of his loved ones. And the sajda was under the dagger. And then the call came from heavens, O nafs mutmainna, I am pleased with you, please come in my heaven, my paradise, Firdaus. इज़्ज़त की मौत मरना जिसने हमें सिखाया, और राह हक़ पे चलना जिसने हमें बताया, और आंसुओं को जिसने अनमोल है बनाया, साबिक़ की आखिरत को आसान भी बनाया. वो है हुसैनी सजदा, कैसा अजीम सजदा. He taught us how to die with dignity and how to walk on the path of haqq, truth. And he made the tears priceless. And वो है हुसैनी सजदा, कैसा. That is the sajda Imam Hussain. What an exalted sajda that is. Salawat.
Jazakallah khair, Sayyid Hassan, and again the fault falls on us. Couldn't find the file for his translation. Alhamdulillah, his recitation, and the slides are a lot more interactive. Lastly, we have Brother Muhammad Shahada with Arabic poetry for Imam Sajjad. Please give him a loud salawat.
Assalamu alaikum. So tonight we had a lot of good poems for Imam al-Hussain, but I thought since in the next couple of days we have also the Milad for Imam al-Sajjad, then maybe I can read some poetry for Imam al-Sajjad. And this poem actually has a very nice story around it. So around the year 90 after Hijrah, an Umayyad prince named Hisham ibn Abdul Malik went to Mecca to do Hajj. And after he did some tawaf, he wanted to reach the black stone. But despite his high status, he wasn't able to reach the black stone because of the amount of people there. And then a man stepped forward, and suddenly everyone parted for him. Without any word or command, this man walked effortlessly to the black stone and touched it. And that man was Imam Zain al-Abidin, So seeing this, a man from Asham asked Hisham, Man hadha? Who is this? But out of arrogance and envy, Hisham said, I don't know. Also attending the scene was a famous poet called Al-Farazdaq. And Al-Farazdaq couldn't hold it. And in response, he improvised one of the most famous poems in Arabic literature, in which he says the following. هذا الذي تعرف البطحاء وطأته والبيت يعرفه والحل والحرم هذا ابن خير عباد الله كلهم هذا التقي النقي الطاهر العلم هذا ابن فاطمة إن كنت جاهله بجده أنبياء الله قد ختموا وليس قولك من هذا بضائره العرب تعرف من أنكرت والعجم. كلتا يديه غياث عم نفعهما يستوكفان ولا يعروهما عدم سهل الخليقة لا تخشى بوادره يزينه اثنان حسن الخلق والشيم حمال أثقال أقوام إذا افتدحوا حلو الشمائل تحلو عنده نعم ما قال لا قط إلا في تشهده لولا التشهد كانت لاؤه نعم. عم البرية بالإحسان فانقشعت عنها الغياهب والإملاق والعدم إذا رأته قريش قال قائلها إلى مكارم هذا ينتهي الكرم. يغضي حياء ويغضى من مهابته فما يكلم إلا حين يبتسم بكفه خيزران ريحه عبق من كف أروع في عرينته شمم يكاد يمسكه عرفان راحته ركن الحطيم إذا ما جاء يستلم الله شرفه قدما وعظمه جرى بذاك له في لوحه القلم.
Great finish, alhamdulillah, to a series of poetry, and thank you for the story as well as the poetry. Allah salawat for brother Muhammad, inshallah. Lastly, the main section of our program, and as usual, we're blessed to have Sheikh Jafar here to lead these commemorations, these times of happiness for our community. Please give 3 loud salawats to Sheikh Jafar.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
نعرہ تکبیر،
الله أكبر.
نعرہ رسالت،
الله رسول الله.
نعرہ حیدری،
وعلي
دشمنان اہل بیت پر لعنت،
اشفع
حضرت فاطمہ الزہرا سلام اللہ کے قاتلوں پر لعنت،
اشفع
جنگ عہد میں بھاگنے والوں پر لعنت.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم به نستعين. الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ودليلا على آلائه وعظمته. ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أرواحنا له فداء. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيتها النفس المطمئنة ارجعي إلى ربك راضية مرضية. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Jameel Mu'mineen Mu'minaat. First and foremost, I congratulate the Imam of our time, Imam Zaman, Jafar al-Sharif. Then I congratulate all of you on the occasion which we are celebrating, and that is the birthday of Imam Hussain ibn Ali, alayhi afdal salatu wa salam. And of course, perhaps if we were in the time of the Imam, then we would suffice with the poetry of Farazdaq. Because mashallah, he was praised and he was elevated by the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wasalam. Not only Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi afdal salatu wasalam, Imam Hussain alayhi afdal salatu wasalam as well. He commended Farazdaq on his poetry and his stance with the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wasalam. Likewise, Imam Sadiq alayhi afdal salatu wasalam also gave high kudos to Farazdaq. So this is only a bit in piece, and we just hope that the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wasalam is pleased with us and also with all of you for our commemoration, for our celebration of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu wasalam. As many of the poetry, it also pointed out that Imam Hussain alayhi afdal salatu wasalam, he has this status of being radiyatan maradiyya, nafsul mutma'inna, this certain and content soul. And of course, the verses that speak about this, it talks about Imam Hussain in that state where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is calling Imam Hussain back to him, that nafsul mutma'inna, ya ayyatuha nafsul mutma'inna, irji'i, return back to your Lord, radiyatan maradiyya, in that state. But one thing that we should understand is that maqam of rida is something that Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, he had in his lifetime. Not only at that moment of his shahadat, of his martyrdom, but even from his own words, we see in those moments in Karbala, even perhaps one of the most difficult moments in Karbala, where the son, the 6-month-old baby of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam is being martyred, he says, "Ridan bi qada'ik." Not only at that moment was Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, was he pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, was he content with Allah, his qada of Allah, but his entire life he had this maqam of rida. Of course, all of our Imams alayhi salatu wasalam, and this is why we kind of give them those, or at least they have those titles, that Jawad, Rida, Sadiq, because this is one of the things they, you could say, their life, they lived around that. That was one of the most prominent attributes or qualities of them. But all of our Imams, alayhim salatu wasalam, when you look at them, all of those sifat, all of those qualities apply. That, of course, Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, he was also Sadiq, he was Jawad, he is Rida, he is Al-Hadi. He has all of those sifat. And all of our Imams alayhim salatu wasalam also have those qualities. But tonight I want to speak about that quality of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, that he was rida. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or at least we give those verses, or many of the ulama, and also in our tafsir, in the riwayat alayhim salatu wasalam, they point to that quality that Imam Hussain was radiyan maradiyya. But there's another place where this quality and this attribute
is also ascribed to Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. And that is in the salawat for Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. As I mentioned in the Jummah, that one of the best a'mal in this blessed month of Sha'ban is to send salutations, send salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And if we open up Mafatih al-Jinan, if we read through Mafatih al-Jinan, we find that there are these du'as, and that's what the salawat is. It is a du'a for the Ahlul Bayt, for each member of the Ahlul Bayt, which is called the salawat. Again, we have this salawat al-Sha'baniyya, which I pointed out in Salat al-Jum'ah, but also in addition to that, in Mafatih al-Jinan, in addition to the ziyarat, you'll find what is called a salawat. So there's a salawat for Fatima Zahra, salamu alayha. Salawat ala nabi. There's a salawat for Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen. Salawat for Imam Hassan. Salawat for Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. And so just so that we're clear about this, there's a difference between the time that we give ziyarah or we make ziyarah, we're in maqam ziyarah, versus the maqam salawat. And what is that difference? Very subtle difference, but at least we should understand this. So if we're reading the ziyarah, we should understand that why are we reading the ziyarah? If we're reading the salawat, why are we reading the salawat? What is that maqam? So the ziyarah, in a sense, is to pay respect to the ma'soom who are making that ziyarah to. Assalamu alayka ayyuhan nabi, for example. Assalamu alayki Ya binti Rasulullah. That whichever ma'soom that we're giving that salutation to, that salam upon, we're paying our respect. And on one hand as well, as we read in some of the ziyarat as well, that when we recite that ziyarah, we should be reciting the what? Arifan bihaqqik. So arifan, having knowledge and understanding of the right of that ma'soom over us. What is the right of Rasulullah? What is the right of Fatima Zahra? What is the right of Amir al-Mu'mineen? So when we're in maqam ziyarah, one of the things we're paying respect, we are at least, or should be gaining ma'rifah as well, that we gain ma'rifah of that maqam of the Ahlul Bayt. And we're recognizing that maqam of the Ahlul Bayt, that station and that status of the Ahlul Bayt. And as sometimes we do in some of those ziyarats, if you pay attention, some of the ziyarats, we're also, in the middle of the ziyarah, we're also making dua. For whom? For ourselves. That, oh Allah, yes, we recognize the status of this individual that you sent to us as an example, as a guide. But with that, as we recognize that status, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, oh Allah, elevate us to that status. Oh Allah, connect me to these individuals. Oh Allah, don't separate my station from these great individuals. Allahumma ja'al mahyana wa mahyana Mahyaya Mahya Muhammad wa al Muhammad wa mamati mamati Muhammad wa al Muhammad. For example, when we recite Ziyarah to Ashura, that, oh Allah, make my life like the life of Muhammad wa al Muhammad. Make my death like the death of Muhammad wa al Muhammad. So we're making dua, or we pay homage. We also understanding, having ma'rifah, or at least should be getting ma'rifah from the maqam, and we make dua for ourselves. The salawat, on the other hand, is different. Why? Because that salawat in itself is a dua. And a dua for whom? For that ma'soom. For that ma'soom. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, if we're making that dua for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or one for Fatima Zahra, salamu alayha, at least one of those that you perhaps hear, I've said it before, Allahumma salli ala Fatimata wa abiha wa ba'liha wa baniha wa sirri masuda' fiha. So that is also salawat for that ma'soom. As we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look, shower your blessings upon them. And one of the beautiful things that when we read those salawat that are specific for each of the Ahlul Bayt, on one hand, we do begin to understand their status in their maqam. But it's different from the ziyarah. In this place, we're making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, Ya Allah, because they had this maqam with you, the station with you, then give them blessings because of that. Shower them more, give them, increase them in favor, in your blessings. And we don't have time to go through all of the aspects of the salawat, but one of the beautiful things that the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam he stated, because those du'as, they reach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those du'as that we make in those salawats, they reach to the Prophet, they reach to the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam. And so what the Prophet, he says, for that individual, he says, because you're praying for the Prophet and his status and his maqam. So it's a beautiful hadith. He says that, Ya Allah, whatever you give me, you give me. And that's all I need. MashaAllah, this believer is praying for me in my station, my closest to you. Ya Allah, that whatever barakah is in that dua, meaning in that salawat, return it back to that individual 100-fold. 100-fold. And this is something that we should be very aware of, that how the Ahlul Bayt alayhim that they pray for us, they pray for the believers. And one hadith says that Imam Zaman Jafar Sharif that he prays for the mu'mineen, he prays for the believers 100 times a day. 100 times a day. And if we truly understand and if we truly want to, again, pay homage, we truly want to connect to the Imam of our time, Jafar Sharif, as some of the ulama, some of the urafa, some of the teachers of Safi, they recommend it, says that as the Imam, he prays for the believers 100 times a day, why not recite 100 salawat a day and give the blessings of that to Imam Zaman Jafar Sharif. But of course, Imam Zaman, he's like his father, his grandfather, like Rasulullah, that he would also say, Ya Allah, whatever that barakah is, whatever that blessing is, return it back to that individual. So that salawat, while we're making it for the Imam, connecting to our Imam, but we also get the benefit of that. In the Fatiha Jiran, when we recite that salawat for Imam Hussain alayhi afdal salatu wasalam, so there are different, like when you read it, it starts with one salawat, Allahumma salli ala al-Hussain ibn Ali al-Shaheed, al-Imam al-Maqtul. So in other words, that salawat is connected to a particular action at times. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because of that action, because of that sacrifice that Imam Hussain alayhi wasallam make, and that's part of where it begins. I'm just paraphrasing there. You can go and check. That we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that because of that sacrifice, Allah increase him in blessing. Increase this Imam in his blessing because of that sacrifice. But the part that I want to focus on is where it talks about this quality of the contentment, the rida of Imam Hussain alayhi wasallam. In that part, we start to make this salutation, Allahumma salli ala sayyidi wa mawlaya kama amala bita'atik wa naha an ma'siyatik. So there's a section, it begins like that. That, oh Allah, give your blessings, your salutations, your blessings upon my master, kama amila bita'atik. For what reason are we asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give his blessings and praise? He says, kama amila bita'atik. Why? Because Imam Hussain alayhi wasallam, that he acted based on your obedience, that he obeyed you, Ya Allah, in every aspect of his life. وَنَهَا عَنْ مَعْصِيَتِكَ. And also because Imam Hussain alayhi wasallam, he forbade people, or at least he did that action of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy al-Munkar, وَنَهَا عَنْ مَعْصِيَتِكَ. That he called people to abstain from the sins and disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we read a little bit further down. He says, and again, these are all connected, that ta'ah of Imam Hussain, that action of doing Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahy al-Munkar. He says, فَعَاشَ فِي رِضْوَانِكَ مَكْدُودًا. So Imam Hussain alayhi wasallam, Ash, that his life. So and you see where I'm going here, because in the verse, if we read that, because quite often that verse is read in Muharram, when we're speaking about Imam Hussain and that sacrifice. Oh content soul, Ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna, irji'i, return back to Allah. Allah is calling you back, not nafs al-mutma'inna. He's calling you back while you're in the state of what? Radiyatan maradiyya. But the salawat says no. فَعَاشَ فِي رَضْوَانِكَ مَكْدُودَ. Meaning that Imam Hussain alayhi that he lived his life in the state of contentment with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Makduda. It describes it. That makdud, kadda means that he made effort. In other words, in order to reach this maqam, and again this is where this salawat ala Imam Hussain alayhi is giving us that maqam, that station of Imam Hussain alayhi, but it is also teaching us, educating us. If we want to reach to that maqam, that station of contentment, becoming that nafs al-mutma'inna, returning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in that state where we are radiyatan maradiyya, then what do we have to do? We have to live our life in that state of contentment. And we'll explain what that state is. And how do we, inshallah, achieve that? Because as we mentioned also last night, when we, I believe it was khutbah number 20 of Nahj al-Balagha, that where the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afro guiding us to, that they are guiding us to elevate our status before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Their status is high, their status is elevated. But they're trying to, again, show you and I how to achieve that status, how to get to that status. And this is why Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, he said that if you really listened, read that khutbah. Many of you weren't in that class, but those of you who were not, I said, read it. Khutbah number 20 of Nahj al-Balagha. It's short, it's not long, but Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, he says that truly if you opened your eyes and you looked and you paid attention, this is for the average person, and if you truly opened your ears and listened, that you will hear what is happening in the grave. You will hear what's happening in the barzakh. He says you have that capacity, but we cover that capacity from ourselves by not walking in those footsteps of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afro. And here this salawat ala Imam Hussain alayhi, again is giving us that same path, that same guidance. فَعَاشَ فِي رَضْوَانِكَ مَكْدُودَ. To make effort to live in the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَضَى عَلَى تَاعَتِكَ. And this is a very beautiful kind of way that this section is painting the life of Imam Hussain alayhi, because we could perhaps understand فَعَاشَ فِي رَضْوَانِكَ مَكْدُودَ وَمَضَى عَلَى تَاعَتِكَ, meaning that he passed away, he was martyred in a state that he is in your obedience. But also it can mean as well that مَضَى وَمَضَى عَلَى تَاعَتِكَ, meaning that his life went from the beginning of his life to that last moment of his life, that he was what? In the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Doesn't simply point to the end, it points to the duration of his life, from the time of his birth to the last moment, the last seconds of his life. Asha fi ridwanillah, and Asha or Mada ala ta'atillah. Wa fi awliyaika makduha. And also he lived, and this could also mean that as well, that he lived among your awliya. And this is, again, one of those very beautiful points that we pick up in the salawat, that وَفِي أَوْلِيَائِكَ مَكْدُوحًا, that you lived among the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, among those awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the lifetime of Imam Hussain alayhi wasallam, of course his grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Amir al-Mu'mineen Fatima Zahra, his brother Imam Hassan, his own son Imam Zayn al-Abidin, his grandson Imam al-Baqir alayhi wasallam. But even among those individuals as well, those who we don't classify at that state of ma'soom, but yet when we understand their life, yes, they are like the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They walked in the footsteps of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad alayhim wasallam, like Salman Farsi, Miqdad Abu Dhar. Again, when we Again, Fazdaq. When we look at the praise of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salatu wasalam, for those individuals, we understand that these individuals, when they lived their life, they lived it in accordance with the Ahlul Bayt, striving to live like Muhammad wa ala Muhammad alayhim salatu wasalam. So you lived fi awliyaika wa fi awliyaika makduha. Makduha also means making effort. So they lived in a way where, again, these individuals who truly took them as an example, they said, oh, this is the lifestyle of the Ahlul Bayt. This is a lifestyle that I need to lead. This is a lifestyle that I need to strive to have. وَقَضَى إِلَيْكَ مَفْقُودًا. And again, he went towards you, Allah, mafquda. And that's a very beautiful statement. So because when we read the dua of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu, dua Arafah, he mentions this concept. So what was it that it says qada ilayka mafquda, and so he returned to you, Ya Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in a state that there was a loss. And what was the loss? What was the loss? We can only understand what that loss or that mafqud was when we recite the dua of Arafah of Imam Hussain. He says, ماذا وجد من فقدك وماذا فقد من وجدك. Subhanallah. One of the most beautiful lines. So for that person who has lost Allah, what have they found? What have they found? But that person who has found Allah, what have they lost? They've lost nothing. So qada ilayka mafquda means that he's lost everything but Allah. And because he's lost everything but Allah, he has everything. He has everything. That hope, that love other than Allah, and that is the state of rida. When we understand that state of being content with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that individual is in what state? They're in that state that is the most important thing to them is Allah. Allah's contentment. What Allah thinks. Allah's being happy with them. If other people are not happy with them, then it's like, it doesn't matter to them. Why? Because their actions are what? Connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In one of the encounters that Imam Hussain alayhi he had with Farazak, this is what Farazak came to him. He says, oh, they're saying that I'm misguided, I'm going. And Imam Hussain alayhi he says, no. He says, we're pleased with you. Allah is pleased with you. This is what matters. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He explains those individuals who have achieved the status, subhanAllah, it's that status where what? Radiyatan maradiyya. That not only are you content with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah is content, Allah is pleased with you. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about these individuals? وَرَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ ذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. That if you achieve this state and this status where you're pleased and you're content with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has for you, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is content with you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with you, ذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْعَظِيمُ. And that is the greatest of achievements. وَرَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ أُولَٰئِكَ حِزْبٌ. Hizbullah, those are the people who are the party of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And subhanAllah, in one of the ziyarat that we have for Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam in the month of Rajab, that salawat, it begins, and this is the salawat, I believe, at the first few days of, or the middle, the 15th of Rajab, where it begins, Assalamu alaikum ya Allah. Peace and salutations be upon you, O the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those individuals who have connected to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how do you connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Allah says, when you're pleased with Allah and He's pleased with you, you become that party of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You become that Allah. وَرَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ وَرَضُوا عَنْهُ ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ خَشِيَ رَبَّهُ. That individual who's pleased with Allah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with him, these are the individuals who, again, the only fear they have fear of no one. They only have fear of their Lord. And I've explained this over and over, what that fear is. It's not a fear that, oh, Allah is going to punish me. It's a fear that, look, will I do something and I sever my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? That is the contentment that these individuals have. That is the state which, again, in a very beautiful narration, Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salatu wasalam, he speaks about, he explains one of the encounters that Nabi Musa alayhi salatu wasalam had with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Kalimullah, this prophet who spoke directly to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah, then I'll give you one of those communications again between Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that hadith al-Qudsi. So Imam Sadiq alayhi sallam said, as he was speaking to Nabi Musa, he told Nabi Musa, he says, the most precious and the most beloved creation of mine is whom? Is al-Abdi al-Mu'min, my servant who is a believer. And he begins to tell Musa, he says, why? He says, because this individual, and everyone is apt, everything in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation is apt, but some are mu'min, some are not. And there's different levels of Iman, but this level of Iman, that Iman, faith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling Musa, he says, this individual, he says, I try him, bala, I send bala for him. And I do it for what is best. I take things from him. As really, I take things from him, meaning that I don't give him things. Or maybe they have something, and I change their status. I change this thing, this barakah, this blessing that they have, I change it. Or I take it away from them. And then, he says, and then I designate things for them. Then I bless them. He says, and in all three of these states, whether it's in the state of bala, whether it's the state in which they gain the ni'mat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or whether it is in a state where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has determined something for them, qada. He says that individual is what? Content. Patient when I give the bala, when I test them, when I try them. Grateful when I give them the blessing and ni'mah. And yarada bi qada. And is content with that qada. Whatever I've given them. Whether it's little, whether it's a lot, whatever that state it may be. And this is something that, subhanAllah, we have to incorporate this idea and this concept. And this is, again, how we gain this state of rida, the state of contentment. To be pleased with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah, as we grow and develop ourselves based on that tarbiyah, based on this training, and not only for ourselves, but then we give that to our children as well. And they give it to their children. There's a beautiful hadith within our books of hadith about this and how this tarbiyah went, especially in the life of Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. Why? Because when we read this hadith, the beginning says this hadith has been narrated by who? By Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wasalam. And narrated by Imam Hassan al-Mushtaba alayhi salatu wasalam. And then also narrated by Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam. In other words, it is a training, an education that the parents, and of course we know that Fatima Zahra salam alayha, she had knowledge of that. As the Prophet said, whatever Ali knew, Fatima knew. But the parents educated their children, Imam Hassan, Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, with regards to this. They educated their children. Why? Because they're narrating it. They're giving it to others. They educated and they gave that tarbiyah to the ummah. This is why we have this hadith. So that at one point, as someone came and they were complaining about their difficulties in life, and mashallah, we have all difficulties in life. We have all kinds of trials in life. But then what does Ibn al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib he say? He says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ أَكْرَمَكُمْ بِدِينِ. Subhanallah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala akramakum. If we truly want to translate this correctly in the context, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you a noble status, has made you kareem, has elevated you. By what? Bidini, by His deen. Subhanallah. Again, this is the value of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the first thing we have to instill within ourselves, that truly, what is the value of this deen, of this Quran, of the Sunnah of Rasulullah, the Sunnah of His Ahlul Bayt, the way of life of Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad alayhim afdalus salam. And if we truly understand it, we will understand that there's nothing more valuable than that in this world. The Quran, the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet Muhammad and his Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salam, their way of life, the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and nothing trumps that. But when we begin to live our life and we think that, oh, well, hey, this is more valuable than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, more valuable than what the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt have said. Oh, well, we have to act by this. You know, times are different. That, well, this is more valuable, and well, this is older, antiquated. This is when we begin to wobble off of that path of Muhammad. We're not content with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. So the first thing that Imam Ali he's saying in his teaching, he says that in Allah akramakum bidini. Understand the value of your deen. And subhanAllah, we had, and hopefully inshallah we have time, but a very beautiful discussion yesterday in the evening with some youth. And they were mentioning about a situation, I'm not going to picture what it was, but there was a situation where they were engaged with someone they knew. And they were shocked at part of their value system. So, you know what, we have to make this stance today, now. Why? Because, the most important thing is being human. And everybody, all these people, they're human. Yeah, I know they don't have the best of values, but we have to stand up for them because they're human. And so this youth was told the person that we knew, they were like, well, that's problematic, because if we're standing up for them, and this is paraphrasing, but if we're standing up for them, which is elevating their values, and their values are contradictory to the Quran, their values are contradictory to the Sirat and Sunnah of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salam, so you're sending the wrong message. And if you're acting upon this, your children are going to be even weaker in their iman because of that. So the person responds, yeah, I know this thing is haram, it's not good. He says, but the people, we have to send them away. So then this youth, he asked the child of this individual, he says, what do you think about this act, or these things that these individuals engage in? He says, oh, there's nothing wrong with it, it's not haram. The person liked to almost spit out his drink. It's like, what? It's like, I know it's haram, but we're standing up for the people. So if we're propping up things or values that are contradictory to the Quran, values that are contradictory to the Sirat and Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, with Allahumma salli Muhammad, without doubt, our own children, without doubt, the next generation are going to be weaker in their iman. Why? Because we haven't taught them that first principle that Imam Ali says, that if you want to be pleased with Allah, Allah pleased with you, understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has given you nobility, He has blessed you with bidini. Then he states, ثم جعل الطاعة حظ الأنفس ورضا الرب. He says, and what is the fortune of a person who understands this? That they come into the scope of the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, this is what He wants, this is what you should be doing, or these are things that you shouldn't be doing, they come into that parameters. The obedience. So there's a connection between the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and gaining that pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what is the hadh, the luck, the fortune of those souls? That they fall into the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they gain the pleasure of their Lord. Second point in this hadith, and it's a long hadith, so I'm just picking a part of that out. Then Imam Ali alayhi he's giving his example. He's giving the example of the Ma'sumin. فَإِنَّهُ مَنَّ عَلَيْنَا. And anyone who falls in that path. فَإِنَّهُ مَنَّ عَلَيْنا بِمَا هُوَ أَهْلُ أَن نَشْكُرَ فِيهِ الآلاء وبلاءه ونعماء. He says, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us, or He has blessed us to thank Him in which state? فيه آلاء. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us things, when He blesses us. وبلاء. And we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when we are in difficulties. Most of us, when we fall into difficulties, what do? Why isn't it work? We start complaining. Oh, why is this? But those individuals who are content with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that when they are blessed by Allah, they say, Alhamdulillah. When some sort of misfortune follows them, they say, oh, Alhamdulillah. In fact, if we truly understood the bala, in other words, when things don't go exactly the way we want them to go, when we think that, this is difficult. I'm having such difficulty. There's so many roadblocks. Or, I want life to go this way, but it's going that way. Those are actually moments of growth. Moments of gaining closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we truly, and then, again, this is the mindset that the Ahmadis use. These are moments in which we grow in our connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Allah, you've given me this bala, this test, this trial, this difficulty in my life, that Allah, then it is only you who can guide me out of it. Only you who can protect me in this moment, safeguard my deen, and make my deen, my faith, stronger. وَنَعْمَ. And of course, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us that ni'mah, that Imam Ali alayhi he says that when we have this mindset, what is it? قَوْلٌ يَسْعَدُ إِلَى اللَّهِ فِيهِ الرِّضَى. That when we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in all these moments and whatever we're faced with, good, bad, difficulties, he says, this is a statement in which we gain the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يَسْعَدُ إِلَى اللَّهِ فِيهِ الرِّضَى. This is a statement, or this is a mindset that reaches to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, Ya Allah, that whatever you've done, I'm content with it. And this is why Imam Hussain alayhi that very difficult moment in Karbala. We're not here to give a musibah, but just imagine this. Perhaps we've, as we perhaps had a miscarriage, or our parents have had one, they lost their child. What is the mindset? Imam Hussain alayhi this baby is born and arrow comes. He says, "Remember qira'ik wa tasliman li amrik." Ya Allah, that this is what you want from me, to sacrifice even to this extent. And how hard is it to bury a child? We expect that, mashallah, we'll get old and frail and our children will bury us. But to see the child right in front of you to be murdered, and then have to bury that child, and you say, Ya Allah, I'm content. Allah. This is the mindset which that individual, which we, again, if we follow the footsteps of Muhammad, whatever we challenge with it, yes, we will reach that maqam of rida. And inshallah, coming towards the end, our time is very short, but this is very important to understand the maqam of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salam. So please give another loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. In the Hadith al-Qudsi, when the Prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is a conversation between the Prophet of Allah and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Mi'raj. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet about this maqam al-rida, that a person who achieves this, who obtains this maqam. He says, فَمَنْ عَمِلَ بِرِضَائِي أُلْزِمُهُ ثَلَاثَ خِصَالٍ. He says, if a person achieves that, if they become content with whatever is happening, whatever I try them with, whatever I bless them with, however life goes, and in some of the riwayat it says, even if the person wakes up in the morning, وَلَا يُبَالِي, he's not concerned with his rizq. Is it a lot? Is it a little? In other words, because I know that, well, Allah is going to give me my rizq. Yes, I have to make my effort. I don't just sit and do nothing. I make my effort, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, my rizq is in His hands. I'm going to make my effort, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's also one of the maqam of rida. An example of it. It says that if a person achieves that level, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless them with three things, three traits. And so that means that they're content with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what happens? Becomes content with that individual, and when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala becomes content with that individual, in other words, this is the part of maradiyya, that, Ya Allah, whatever you do, radi, I'm radi, I'm radiyun. But that maradiyya, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is content with that servant, He gives him these three characteristics. يُعَرِّفُهُ شُكْرًا لَا يُخَالِطُهُ الْجَهْلِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him a state, or makes him understand how to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have shukr, to give thanks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but not just any thanks. لَا يُخَالِطُهُ الْجَهْلِ, meaning that ignorance doesn't touch this shukr. Meaning it doesn't coincide with ignorance or not understanding. And some of the scholars have interpreted this meaning that not jahl, they don't have ignorance, that whatever ni'mah they have is from Allah. It's not from people. But yes, we thank people to thank Allah, to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but that ni'mah, it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some say that ni'mah, to understand or to be able to be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where it's not engulfed in jahl or misunderstanding or ignorance, is that gratefulness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where we have ma'rifah of not only just the ni'mah itself, but the one who gives the ni'mah. One who gives the ni'mah. When we have ma'rifah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So with being content with Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us ma'rifat of Him. The second thing, and just to be quick, it says, وَذِكْرًا لَا يُخَالِطُهُ النِّسْيَانِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give that individual remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, لَا يُخَالِطُهُ النِّسْيَانِ. That person will be in a constant state of dhikr, in remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanallah. They'll never forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's almost like the state that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and only once a year do we reach that state, that we are in a constant state of dhikr. All of us. And when? When is that? In Ramadan. As we mentioned in the khutbah, that our breath is dhikr. We breathe. We're going to inhale and exhale. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's counting it. These are the dhikr of that servant. But these individuals, not simply in Ramadan, outside of Ramadan. Why? Because they're content with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That they're constantly in the state of dhikr and remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. La yukhalitu nisyan. They never forget Allah subhanahu. Subhanallah. The third thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses that individual is this, وَمَحَبَّةً لَا يُؤْثِرُ عَلَى مَحَبَّتِي مَحَبَّةَ الْمَخْلُوقِينَ. Subhanallah. He says that I will give them a love, and that love is for who? Love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I will give them a love that no love, لا يؤثر على محبتي, and nothing will affect that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from the love of His creation. that the most important hope, the most important love, the most important connection in our life is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all other connections to the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is through that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because even the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he made the statement, even the Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdal salatu, they made that statement that yes, they love the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They hate to see the creation of Allah disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and set themselves towards Jahannam. But that love is by the love of Allah. So they love the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to give you an example of this, this is why when one person from Kufa, he asked Imam Hussain, he wrote this letter. And usually when you talk about a hadith that has been written, someone wrote and asked Imam, usually those are preserved better. Why? It's not based on memory. It's like, oh, it was written. And it was transcribed. So this person asked Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam that he says, how do I get the good of this world and the next? How do I achieve this? So Imam Hussain alayhi salatu wasalam, he responded with one of the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he told him, he says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Amma Ba'id. He says that whoever seeks God's pleasure, meaning without Allah, by displeasing people, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will suffice that person with their affairs with people. Meaning that your most important objective is to please Allah, not to please people. And he says, and if you do that, then your affairs with other people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of it. However, if you seek the pleasure of people at the expense of the displeasure of Allah, oh, I'm trying to make this person happy, I want to make this person happy, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to be pleased with you. He says, that Allah will do what? Leave that person to themselves. Tawakkalhu ala nafsi. The Imam Hussain says, wassalam. Simple as that. Simple as that. To gain that rida of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then our hub, our love, should be exclusively for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I'll just end with these 2 points, and this is what, again, we recite in Dua Kamil, that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ij'al qalbi bihubbika mutayyima. Bihubbika mutayyima means what? That, oh Allah, fill my heart with your love. Mutayyim means you cleanse it of everything else, but the hubb of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And everything you love in this world is to that love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also in the Munajat of Sha'baniyah, which inshallah in this month we will read, very beautiful, that we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we say that, look, I have no power over anything, even going against your ma'siyah, إِلَّا فِي وَقْتٍ إِيقَذْتَنِي بِمُحَبَّتِكَ. When did I have strength to abstain from your forgiveness, from your sin, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from your disobedience? When you've woken my heart up to your love. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we end with this part of the dua of Sha'baniyah, Ilahi. It says, Aqimni, but for all of us, Ilahi, Aqimna fi ahli walayatik, muqama man raja ziyada min muhabbatik. That, O Allah, establish us among your ahli walaya, among Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, and all those who follow the place of Muhammad. Establish us among them, or give us a place among them, whereby we hope and we long for a greater status with your love. Min raja ziyada min muhabbatik, that we love or we long for a greater love and connection to you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which means that we will be content with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. اللهم كل وليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة ولي وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتع فيها تولا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على
as we are going to do a salawat for Imam Hussain. Inshallah, as the sisters leave the hall, Allah, dinner. any issues that lots of
الله أكبر. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد